My name is Catherine Moakler. I'm an assistant city attorney with the City of Gainesville. With me is our Sean McDermott and Dr. Michael Mcdonald. The city hired redistricting experts, Drs. Michael McDonald and Daniel Smith, who are with the UF Bureau of Economic and Business Research, to create 3 maps for consideration by the City Commission as part of our mandatory redistricting after the census. I'd like to give you a very brief background of Dr. McDonald and Mr. McDermott. Sean McDermott has been with the City of Gainesville for 10 years and is a transactional attorney, practicing primarily in land use and also represents the GCRA. Dr. Michael McDonald is a professor of political science at the University of Florida. He received his PhD in political science from the University of California, San Diego, and bachelor's in economics from California Institute of Technology. He held a 1-year postdoc fellowship at Harvard University and previously taught at George Mason University, Vanderbilt University, and the University of Illinois, Springfield. During this presentation, Mr. McDermott will present the redistricting resolution that was recently signed by the City Commission. The resolution contains the guidelines the City Commission will follow when choosing a final map for adoption. Then Dr. McDonald will demonstrate how to use the District Builder software, which will allow neighbors to create their own maps. Neighbors can submit their own maps to the City Commission for consideration by sending maps to comments@cityofgainesville.org. And this email address will be presented in a later slide at the end of the presentation. The City Commission is expected to adopt a map in early May 2022. All right, Mr. McDermott, please take it away. And I will share the redistricting resolution.
All right, thank you, Catherine, and good evening, everyone. I'll be brief, and really what I am gonna do is I'll just outline some of the legal parameters that the city has to use when we redistrict the city's election districts. And, but first I wanna say, this redistricting will be unique as opposed to when we did this 10 years ago. That in the fact that the GIS software and the technology has just, I think, come a long way. So this is the first redistricting really ever in the city of Gainesville, where there is this really exciting software tool that, and that's what we're going to be getting into tonight, that allows anybody to tinker around with the election districts to draw your favored districts. And so it really, I think, adds a lot of transparency, because I think, as most anybody who's lived in this country knows, the redistricting process has historically often been used for nefarious purposes, whether it's discriminating against racial and language minorities, or to favor political parties, one political party over another. And so anyway, so this tool is really exciting because it allows the public, or anybody to play around with the actual election districts in the city of Gainesville to determine what would be your favored outcome. So my intent is just to outline, when anybody is doing that exercise of kind of drawing your own election districts, is to make, it's just to outline what you have to keep in your mind when you're doing it, like how to, the parameters of actually drawing the election district. And it is outlined in this resolution that the City Commission adopted last week. And it's nothing that the city of Gainesville has made up. It's really just an articulation of federal case law and what's required for when any municipality or local government engages in redistricting. And so it won't take long for me to go through it, and I'll just outline that there's 2 criteria that are just absolutely mandatory. So these are like the there's no wiggle room with the first 2 that I'll get into, and then there's 6 criteria after that we really should strive for, to try to meet those the best we can. But those are going to be really like a balancing act, where you'll find that it's really impossible to meet all of them perfectly. So there'll be a kind of a give and take for the final 6 criteria to achieve what you and the City Commission thinks are the best election districts. So that's kind of how this resolution is outlined. And so it starts with the first two criteria, which again, these are the mandatory criteria. The first one is population equality, and the second one is meeting the Voting Rights Act, which is a federal legislation. So just briefly, because it's pretty straightforward. As you can imagine, population equality is just derived from the U.S. Constitution and its requirement that everybody within the within the country has equal representation under the law and in matters of voting. And so what that means on a practical level is that we have to get, the city of Gainesville is broken into 4 election districts, and each of those districts has to have nearly equal population as possible. You can imagine it's not going to be perfectly, there's probably no way to draw the districts where all 4 districts have the exact equal population. So there's some wiggle room that's allowed, and that deviation is up to 10%. That's kind of the golden rule under the law, where the deviation for the average population with each respective district shouldn't deviate beyond that 10%. So I would say this is like when you start engaging with the software, this is something to keep in mind as you kind of drag the borders of the different districts, is to just, again, this is like the hard and fast rule that we have to stay within that population deviation. So they can't be drawn in any way where one district just has significantly more voters than the others. So that's easy enough. That's the first mandatory criteria. The second one is the Voting Rights Act, which just requires that governments can't discriminate racial or language minorities in a manner by how they redistrict. And really, what that means is, and this is has been a practice that has been in fact done before, but when the districts are drawn in a way to intentionally dilute a racial or language minority group to vote, that would be a clear violation of the law. And just as an example, what dilution means in this context is when the districts are drawn in such a way that where a racial or language minority group could have had a voting age majority in one district, but that population group would say split in half or some other way to where it was intentionally diluted to take away some of that equal representation under the law rights that those folks would have. So I think that our consultant can get into this more, but the city of Gainesville, it's just factual to say that the city of Gainesville cannot be drawn in such a way, that election districts, that is, cannot be drawn in such a way to give a racial or language minority group a voting age majority in one district, just based on demographics and the way the population is in the entire city of Gainesville. So that's, take that for what that's worth. The districts can't be drawn in any way to say on the east side to ensure that District 1 has a voting age majority of Black population within District 1, just the way that demographics are. So those are the two things that, again, mandatory. You have to look out for the equal population within 10% deviation, are not allowed to violate the Voting Rights Act. And then the rest, like I said, the final 6 are just you should aim to achieve them all the best you can. Again, it's kind of like a give or take. Just moving through these, the first one there is compactness. So the best way to describe that is like the tightest kind of shape that each district can be. That would be the most ideal shape for any single district, as opposed to maybe a real elongated or bizarre shape. And I think everybody's heard the term gerrymandering, and where it's just can look like a long snake or lizard of some sort. As compact and tight as that district, any given district can be, the better. So, a circle would be the most compact shape you can. So that's compactness. The next one, contiguity, is related, but it's a little different. And that just means that the districts should, all the area within any given district should be and within the same geographical kind of boundaries. It really, what that means is we should avoid, say, an island of a district in one location, and then there's like another island of the same district that's kind of skipped across some area. I will say you'll just notice the city of Gainesville's boundaries themselves do have a few areas that look to be islands, or just like right on the periphery of the city's boundaries, where there'll be a little, what looks to be like a little island that is within the city, but is not directly touching the city's boundaries. And that's just, without being long-winded, that's just because under annexation law, that can happen with certain instances where there's, say, like a body of water. So if you have to skip over like a lake, or some even man-made obstacles, like a highway or something, where you can skip over to annex and bring into the city some territory on the other side of those divisions. And so, but again, the contiguity requirement should be achieved to the extent that's practical, the most extent practical in this give and take. The next one is just geographical boundaries. It's kind of related to contiguity again, where each district should, to the extent practicable, recognize significant natural or man-made boundaries. So, like I just described before, like if there's a body of water or a big man-made obstacle of some sort, a highway, it's okay to recognize those, and in some kind of logical or coherent way, draw the district around those. Political boundaries is the next one, and that's where the districts should recognize existing political boundaries to the extent practicable. And again, you'll see the language over and over here is to the extent practicable, because it is going to be impossible to do this perfectly, just the way it works out. But again, so this should recognize, like U.S. congressional and Florida legislative districts and voting precincts. Our supervisor of elections is really strong with the opinion that the voting precincts established by her office should not be split. That just provides a whole host of issues with running elections, and census blocks. So those should all try to be, again, respected to the greatest extent as possible. Communities of interest is the next one. This is an interesting one because it's again, to the extent practicable, the redistricting process should recognize existing communities of interest, and it gives some examples there where the folks within these areas where they share social, political, cultural, religious, or economic interests. Neighborhoods and subdivisions could qualify, downtown districts, historical districts, or economic districts. This one, I think it's interesting. It's good to point out here that that our city commission, the last redistricting I was involved with, and this one as well, has stated their intent to really try to respect the District 1 in particular, in the great number of Black residents that live within that district, and kind of keeping that voting block as strong as possible. So it's kind of the opposite of potentially trying to discriminate under the Voting Rights Act. It's actually affirmatively, and I think it fits squarely into here, trying to recognize and protect that community of interest. And so, and again, and I just want to emphasize that because this is a give and take, and the commission has expressed that that's very important to them, and how they'll be kind of, ultimately approving the new election districts. So this is where, some of these other, the last 6 criteria there with compactness and contiguity, that might have to, not, some of those may not end up being perfect in order to achieve really protecting certain communities of interest, particularly Black residents on the east side of town that make up live largely within District 1. And so, and in the last criteria here kind of speaks to that same point, but the existing district cores. So what this is saying is that each district should, again, to the extent practicable, maintain the existing election districts as previously drawn. So that was, a lot of the intent that I just spoke to was kind of the same redistricting criteria and intent that went into the redistricting effort at the City of Gainesville 10 years ago. And so, this criteria looks to try to respect that, as opposed to, and you're welcome to, again, those first two criteria, the only two absolute mandatory ones. So you're welcome to submit whatever, you want. In fact, the city welcomes that any proposed districts that meet those two mandatory criteria. And what I'm saying is, even when, so if you want to submit ones that really is just, thinking outside of the box and drawing completely new election districts that look very different than the existing election districts, you're welcome to do that, absolutely. But just know that this has been articulated by the City Commission that, they might not be interested in deviating really substantially too far from the existing districts, election districts. So that's it. In summary, it's just those first two mandatory criteria that you really want to keep in your head when you're tinkering around with the GIS software, and then try to balance all those remaining criteria. And, I'm happy to take questions now or throughout the process. We're here to help facilitate and, answer any questions or confusion there may be. And yeah, I think with that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Mr. McDermott. I think we'll take questions at the end. At this time, we'd like to welcome Dr. McDonald, and he will be sharing a demonstration on how to use the District Builder software.
Thanks, Catherine, and thanks, Sean. So I've been doing redistricting since the late 1980s, and I've, through the process of being involved at working with commissions and state governments across the country, I decided that it was really important to have public participation so that we could have greater transparency in the redistricting process. And so 10 years ago, we created this District Builder software and deployed it in support of advocacy efforts, and actually supported a couple of local redistrictings as well throughout the entire country. And so I'm very pleased now to be able to support Gainesville, which is now my home. I've lived here for 7 years, and help with the process here in Gainesville and have it as a transparent and process that really engages the public. My colleague Dan Smith, who's also in the Department of Political Science at the University of Florida, served on the Citizens Commission, Advisory Commission to the City Commission 10 years ago. So he has a little bit more experience. He's been around here about 20 years. So we do have some experience with redistricting here in Gainesville in the prior cycle. Again, it's my pleasure to be able to assist the city on this very important task of representation for the people of Gainesville. I wanted to just mention one thing about playing off of what Sean was just talking about before I go into the software and the details. If you're a member of the public and you want to submit an entire redistricting plan, there are 4 commission districts. It's pretty easy to draw 4 commission districts. It doesn't take too much time. But if you wanted to do a single district, that's fine too. If you want to just draw out a district that really isn't a full district, it's maybe what you want to define as your community of interest, that's fine too. And then you can easily just, and I'll show you in the demonstration, you can provide the URL of the map that you've created, and you can provide and send that into an email to us and describe what it was that you were attempting to do. Like, this is my community in my neighborhood, and explain why it is that that's what you're trying to do. And we'll collect that information and then as we go through the process of doing the redistricting, we'll try to take all those public comments into account as we come up with these 3 scenarios for the commission to consider adopting and moving forward on. In this process, as I understand it, when we make that suggestion to the commission as one of the 3 plans to move forward and they select one, there will still be some more back and forth and negotiating. One, we don't really know what the state legislature is going to do with the state legislative and congressional boundaries. So we don't know if they're going to come in and split up Gainesville. And so we, if we're going to respect the state legislative or congressional district boundaries, we don't really know what those are yet. We probably won't know until April or so. And then that's when the supervisor of elections is going to redraw the precincts if she needs to, in order to make sure that the precincts follow the local precinct boundary lines. And it's at that stage, once we get the legislature to take its action, the supervisor of elections of Alachua to take their action, then we can come in and finalize up the districts if we're going to draw them. So this process is going to be a little bit drawn out. There's going to be lots of opportunities for public comment and fiddling around to make sure that we can comply with all the criteria that the commission has stated they wish to achieve. One last thing I would say about the district builder software: if you do submit a map and you provide that URL, don't tinker with it more. We'll try to get a static copy of that as soon as we can, but this district builder is a live application, and so you could go back in and continue mapping and change your map, and it may be different than what you intended to submit as your public comment, and so we might lose some important information of what you really intended to convey in your first email that you would send to us. So if you do draw a map and you submit it, then that's fine. Don't touch it anymore, and send it off to us, and then you can always copy it, and you can start with another map and continue on with your work. But we'll ask you not to touch those maps as we move forward. Okay, so I am going to share my screen, and I thought I would show you how to get through to the software through the city's website. So that people, this is probably the most frequent way most of the people who are new to District Builder or new to the city redistricting are going to come into District Builder. So there's what Sean just presented to us. There's information about the guidelines, and just much like he said here, you can click on the different criteria, so you can see what those are, and there's more information. There's the email address that you can send the comments to on this page. And then there's a link that says ready to draw a map. And so if we click on that, that gets us to the District Builder software. And here we go. Now, I've logged myself out. So what normally, since I already have an account with District Builder, naturally, since I helped create it, I don't have to create a new account, but you can register and you create just an account like you might normally do with a website. We do ask for your email address because the email is going to help us contact you if we need to have any issues with your account, or you lose your login, your password or something like that. That's going to be our best way to get back in touch with you. I don't need to create an account since I already have one. So I'm just going to go ahead and log in, and I'll get into District Builder then. And of course, it always goes slow whenever you're doing a live demonstration with something. So here we are. And you can see I have many maps. Most frequently, what you're going to be doing is you'll be coming into this organization page for the once you've created an account. You'll have to be able to join an organization. So if I go back to this page, and if I'm going to click off this for a second, so ready to draw a map. What it does, it drops you directly into the City of Gainesville organization page. So I've logged in now. I've got an account, and I could join this organization or I could leave it. But joining the organization allows you to draw redistricting plans using the information that the organization has provided to you. Now, over the last 2 weeks, we've worked closely with the city and with Supervisor of Elections to make sure that we have the proper boundaries, both for the city and for the precincts within the city. And in doing that work, we actually had to do a little data manipulation. There were a couple of census blocks, which I'll show you in a minute what I'm talking about when I say census blocks, but they were actually being split. The precinct lines were actually crossing the census blocks. So we had to do a little bit of work on there. The precinct boundaries that you're going to see in District Builder don't precisely follow the precinct boundaries for the city, and we had to make some choices on whether or not we'd make very small splits of census blocks, which didn't affect any population, in order to follow the precinct boundary lines, or if we would just keep some of those census blocks whole. We decided, for the ease of doing the redistricting for people, that we would just go ahead and not split those census blocks when there was no population at stake. And so at the end, we had to split 2 census blocks. I say this because there's other redistricting software out there. There's another very popular free application called Dave's Redistricting app, for example. And through the work that we do at the University of Florida, we love Dave. We support him wholeheartedly on what his team's doing for redistricting. And so if you were to use some other software, drawing your map and then try to import it into just District Builder, it will mostly work. But because we had to change some of the data around, it won't work perfectly, and you'll still have to do just a little tiny touch-ups to finish up your map after you import it into District Builder. Okay, and that's really for the experts out there who are mappers and have been using other applications, other GIS, geographic information systems, to draw districts. Okay, so once I've joined this organization, City of Gainesville, and you can get back to that page here that we were just looking at if you wanted to by clicking here. And I've created my account, I'm ready to go. You have 2 choices. You can start with a blank map, or you can start with the current districts. I would recommend starting with the current districts just because you can always change these district boundary lines, as I'm about to show you, and it's not a big deal. If you want to start with a blank map, you can do that. That's your prerogative. But I think it's just going to be easier for your experience to start with the current district. So I'm going to just say use this template. And when I say that, now District Builder is loading in all of the data that we need to do a redistricting, the boundaries, the census data. And so what we're showing here then are the current 4 districts in Gainesville. And you can see the city of Gainesville in the background with the map, so it gives you a bit of context as to where these districts are located. If we wanted, so there's a pane over here. So this is the, you can see visually see the districts here. There's some statistics about these districts over on the left-hand side, this pane over on the left-hand side. And so here we can see there's a green District 1. So here's green District 1. I can see that its population is 34,721 people currently. It's only 550 people below the ideal population that Sean was talking about earlier. It gets a little check mark because actually you could just leave it alone. You don't have to touch this district if you don't want to, and it will be within the population tolerance. We can also see some of the racial characteristics of the district as well. So we can see that according to the Census Bureau, whites are 38% of this district. Now, if you total up all the other numbers, you're going to say, wait a second, that's more than 100%. What is this professor? He does not know how to add. Actually, the way in which the federal government defines race is that people can have multiple races. They can say that they're African American and white, and they could also be Hispanic, and they could also be Asian American. You could have lots of different combinations. For voting rights purposes, you add up all of those combinations for that particular race. So you look at African American in combination with every other race. You do that same thing with Asian. You do it with Asian, with every other race, including African Americans. And that's when you get the double counting. And that's how these percentages can sometimes go over 100%. What the important thing for a racial a voting rights issue is really if you can get above 50% of a particular minority group. In that case, the Supreme Court has said that that triggers one of the requirements for, potentially to require a voting rights district under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. So that's one of the things that we want to take a look at. We may still wish to respect a minority community for its character and because it's a community of interest. And so it may be that we will not touch too much the first district. It's really a decision up to the City Commission to decide. But right now, there's because this district is within the population tolerance, you don't really need to touch it to any great extent. There's only really one district that's below, as it turns out. According to the census, all of Gainesville grew in population, and all of the districts within Gainesville roughly grew at the same rate. It's only the Northern District 2 that is slightly out of population deviation. So if you want to look at a minimal change map, all you have to do is just do a slight change of the boundary lines between District 2 and say District 4, which is the most overpopulated district, and you can actually bring the entire map into population balance pretty easily. That's not to say that that's, that sort of scenario is, a minimal change scenario that we're likely going to present to the City Commission is one of the scenarios, one of the 3 draft maps, but we're still very much interested in what the public has to say. So we definitely want to see other ideas that people have about how to approach the redistricting in Gainesville. So I don't think that it's any said and done that this minimal change map will necessarily be the one that the City Commission thinks is the best one to move forward and adopt for themselves. How will I get to that map? Well, that's probably the thing that most people want to know is like, well, how do I draw that district? It's pretty simple. Right now, what you're seeing within each of the districts, you're seeing precincts. So we've identified all the precincts. And if we wanted to actually, as it turns out, there's actually a precinct 7 is right here. If I wanted to balance out the populations of District 2 and District 4, I could just add this little territory right here over into from District 4 into District 2. And that would produce a minimal change map, one scenario of that. So how do I do this? So first of all, I want to select up that my target district is going to be District 2. If I selected the entire precinct, well, that's not going to help us because it's going to create a non-contiguous piece here. We were just talking about these islands. We don't want to do that. So we probably don't actually want to go and assign this entire precinct. But if we did, let's just, for fun's sake, let's do it. Here we are. We've done it. It's created this island, so that's no good. Maybe I don't like that map that I just did. Well, I can always, there's a back button, just like you would have with any other software that you may use. So you can go back and you can undo the thing that you just did. What if I just wanted to split this in half? Knowing that, again, that precinct boundaries are going to change and other things are going to happen along the way. What if I just wanted to split this precinct in half? Well, I'd have to go below the precinct level to start doing that mapping. So I can also select what are called census blocks. These are these very small geographies. So the smallest geography that the Census Bureau releases population data at. And that's actually kind of important for people to understand just generally. The census doesn't release individual data. They want to protect people's confidentiality, their personal information. So in order to protect people's personal information. They release aggregate statistics so that you really can't backwards engineer who an individual person is from the aggregate statistics. And so that's releasing the data this way at this very fine level, but still rough in some ways because it doesn't go down to the individual, is the way that the Census Bureau is protecting your confidentiality. Now let's again go back to the mapping task. I want to take all of this geography here and add it into District 2 from District 4. We saw earlier I could click on something using this click tool, and I can go around and click up all the census blocks, but that's going to take a little time to do. And sometimes that's what you want to do because you're really trying to fine tune what how you're drawing the district, or maybe your community is much smaller than and you really want to fine tune and get down into it. There's also a way to just select up everything at once using a square select, and anything that it touches will be selected in the selection. Now, because I've selected District 2 as the destination district, all of these areas already in District 2, when I clicked accept, are already going to go into they're already there in District 2, so they're going to remain in District 2. It's just these census blocks here in District 4 that will be assigned to District 2. I also get kind of a preview here. I can see that if I cancel this out, I was underpopulated by 2,601 before I made that move. If I again select this up, I'm getting a preview. I can see now District 2 is going to be under by 752. It gets a little check mark now because it's within population balance. And District 4 is going to be slightly under at 85 people under the ideal population for a district. But it also gets a check mark because it's within the acceptable tolerance of, we're using plus or minus 5 percentage points. So we're good. And if I click accept, there I am. I've now produced a map that satisfies the population equality requirement that's in under the 14th Amendment. So this could be a viable map. Again, I think we want to see what other people are going to do, what the public's going to do, but that's how to get to this. Now, if you want, there's more things to do here. I've just kind of given you the rough guide of how to quickly draw districts. If I go back into these census blocks, you can see that each block has a name, and I can actually see the population of those blocks and the racial characteristics of the blocks. I can even see the political composition of those blocks. We decided to make political data available to you. I've been leading a team at the University of Florida that's produced this political data for the entire country. Pretty much, we're down to 2 states left, but we've done this for everywhere, and it's being used very widely. And so we want to use it here in Gainesville. Gainesville is a very democratic town. I don't think that's going to come as a shock to anybody. But if someone thinks that the commission's gerrymandering somehow, Republicans, you're welcome to attempt to draw a Republican leading district in Gainesville. I think you're going to find it's pretty hard to do. If I just click on the evaluate tool up here, I'm going to show you why that's pretty hard to do. And here we have population equality. We have the different metrics that we might want to look at, and I'll come back to contiguity in just a second. But equal population gives you the same statistics that we were just looking at. Here we can see those numbers right here in the summary pane. We can look at them again here. Competitors, this is the political character of the districts. And we're using something that's called the Presidential Voting Index. It was created by the Cook Political Report. It's the average of the last 2 presidential elections. And we overall statewide, Florida was about 2 percentage points towards Trump in 2020 and 2012 when you take the average. And so we shift the numbers actually nationally, not statewide, but nationally back in the direction to have a 50-50 election. So we're actually deflating the numbers a little bit towards the Republican direction here in Gainesville to get a hypothetical what would be a 50-50 election nationwide for president, both for 2016 and 2018. And even when we do that, you can see that all of these districts are very heavily Democratic. So again, we want ideas from the public. And if representation for Republicans is a priority that someone wants to investigate, please do so. We're very open to getting ideas from you on how that might be accomplished. But as you can see right here, that second district is the one that's going to come closest at the moment. And it's only, it's still Democratic by 15 percentage points, more Democratic than Republican, according to the presidential vote. So it'll be difficult to do, but again, welcome people to try attempt to do it. We've looked at the racial composition, so I'll pass over that. I want to also look at precinct splits. This will show us all of the splits for the precincts, and you can check around to see where these splits are occurring. Some of these splits are, unfortunately, there are some features of what's happening with some minor geography on the edge of the town. So they're not really truly splits in the same way we might think of as like something like this, what we just did here, where we came in and split this. But you can still look down into it. And if I come back out oh, let's see if I can get this to move. Close out this. There's a way to find, if you click on this find button. I don't have any unassigned territory at the moment, but sometimes when you're working with blocks, and especially if some of these blocks are kind of ridiculous if you stop and think about it. They're literally the median of a road. So sometimes when you're doing redistricting at the block level, you can mess up and not assign a road, and that becomes kind of difficult to go find it. There's a way to do this. There's also a way to look for the non-contiguous pieces, and you can look around the city to find where we might have issues. Now, I guess I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but this would be an example of what Sean was talking about earlier. There are non-contiguous portions of the city of Gainesville that surround the periphery of the city, and so they're there, and they are part of the city. So we don't have much that we can do in terms of saying that they're not. This is contiguous when it's not contiguous. It's clearly not contiguous. And so as you're drawing the maps and you're doing this contiguity check and you're looking for these non-contiguous pieces, you're going to find all of these pieces that are out on the border of the city, but they're not attached. And there's quite a few of them. Oak Hall School, which was just recently annexed. You've got these little pieces that are crossing roads and lakes that Sean was talking about. So these are legitimate pieces of Gainesville. They're not contiguous. You'll want to just make a decision on, as you're drawing your districts, where they're going to go. I mean, for the most part, they look like they're going to be on, areas that you might assign to a district anyway that is most closest. But again, those are the sorts of decisions that you're going to have to make as you're drawing your districts. And I was going to go back to the, I think we're pretty much done. We can change what districts we're going to draw. Oh, yes, I know one other thing I want to show. Once you've drawn a district and you feel pretty comfortable about it, it's possible, like the District 1 here, I like District 1. I can lock it into place. And that will mean that any further changes that I attempt to make to that district, I won't be able to make until I come back and unlock it. So this is a good tool. Once you're satisfied with the district, and you don't want to inadvertently make a mistake and assign territory to it, you can lock it into place, and then if later on you want to unlock it and make edits to it, that's fine too. But this will just keep you from making some mistakes down the road as you're finalizing your plans. Lastly, I'll just cancel this. I want to go back to the software itself and at a higher level. Oh, before I do that, I'm sorry. You can export a file, a redistricting plan, and unfortunately, I know this is. Let me get rid of this. We got two things that are going on once. Here we go. So if you want to take this plan and move it into another piece of software, another GIS software, there are different formats that we will accept for exporting a plan. So this export will help you with that. The resources, we do have online resources. Azavia, which is the company which developed District Builder under our supervision. You can contact them directly if you have any problems with the software. You can also send us comments, and we will try to answer your questions that way as well. There's also a guide here that you can use as Xavier's created. When you want to share your plan, you can, I should say, like this right up here, this URL is shareable. So if you copy this URL and you paste it into anything else, anybody else can come in and see that plan immediately. So that's a way for you to share your plan. You know, if you want to do a blog post, if you want to share it with other people as you're working on it, this is a way to do it. You can change. We do that by default. We make everything public because we're about transparency. But if you don't want other people to be able to see your plan, and gosh, they'd have to know this long string of numbers. But if you're just a little paranoid about that, you can always click over to be private. And now people can, who aren't signed into your account will not be able to see your plan. So publish, moving back to publish, we'll publish it to the web for everybody to see. This will copy this URL, same thing, URL to your clipboard, so you can paste it into an email or anything else that you wish to paste it into. So that's this shortcut here. Okay, so how would I get a copy of a plan from one? I like a plan that somebody's created. I want to make a copy of it. I can export it, and I have these different export options. I would export as with CSV. It's not the drugstore chain, it's CSV. It means comma separated values. And that's a very standard format that redistricting software uses to identify plans. It's a list of all the census blocks and all the districts that are assigned to those census blocks. So if I want to, if I see another plan that I like that someone else has shared, I can always export it as a CSV. It will ask you to save that to your disk, and then you can reload it in. But how do you do that? Well, you come back into District Builder, and there's an import feature, and you would download that plan to your computer, and then you would click a file to upload, and again, it has to be a CSV file in order for you to load it in. And once you do, District Builder is going to recognize that this is a City of Gainesville map, and will load it in properly. Lastly, I'll just go back. If you want to get back to your account, as things go on, you may have many districts. I've already got many of them right here. In fact, this is kind of bad because I've got like 3 City Commission districts. Which one's the one I've been working on? Well, it does have some information about when I created it, but you can come up into here. Oops, sorry. Not sure why I'm having this problem. Should be able to change its name. There, here we go. I was just having some rename. So now I can, give it a better name. My city. And that would be much more descriptive than the map that it would, as a map name. So that might help keep things sane for you as you're creating lots of different maps. As you can see, I've got maps from New Mexico here and Florida, and took a stab at the Atlanta School Board a couple days ago. So it's possible to get lots of different maps going as you're drawing plans across the country, and you can load in different plans into District Builder. So this is a tool if you're interested in redistricting, not just here in Gainesville. It's actually something that you can, it works in all 50 states, not just in Gainesville. Lastly, to get back to those organization pages, I've already joined a couple of different organizations, but I can get back to my City of Gainesville redistricting page, and here again I can start drawing up some maps. Once we get some maps from you in the public, we will start featuring those and come up with some ideas that people have. So hopefully down the road we're going to start getting some public submissions here, and we'll start featuring maps, and other people can see about the good ideas that folks are creating for their maps. And so with that, I think I will end my presentation, and be happy and delighted to answer any questions that people may have.
Madam Clerk, would you like to open up the floor to callers?
Yes, if there are any callers on the line who would like to, or anyone in the meeting, one moment.
There is one question on about census block data, and the question is, when a district line is on a road or street, does it place one side of the road or street in one district and the other side in another? It's really up to how you assign census blocks, and it's really the determination of the Census Bureau as to how they defined their census geography. So if the boundary line is that middle of the street, then you can have two districts that are, or two census blocks that are in two different districts that are on each side of the street. In some cases, though, as I was showing you with that road median, you can actually have census blocks that go down the middle of a road on top of everything else. So the Census Bureau tried to resolve this road median issue, and they tried to simplify their geography as much as they could, but there's still this road median issue in many places. There's streams that are their own census blocks. We're going to see some of that in Gainesville. And so we're dependent on the Census Bureau. And the reason why is we have to have equal population. So where do we get that population from? We get it from the Census Bureau. How does the Census Bureau provide that population data? Well, at the most fine-grained level, it's within these census blocks. So we're drawing districts out of census blocks, and we're just sort of constrained by how the Census Bureau has defined the geography for Gainesville.
Thank you, Dr. McDonald. And if any other guest participants would like to ask a question, you can click the raise hand button on your Zoom screen. Or if you don't have audio on your device, you can call in the number you see on your screen, 1-929-205-6099. Then you'll enter the ID 890-8756-6951. Then you'll dial *9 to raise your hand. So we'll wait a couple more moments and see if anyone would like to call in. Or of course, again, you can type your question in the Q&A box.
And while we're waiting, I wanted to let everyone know that Doctors Mcdonald and Smith will be submitting their 3 recommended maps to the City Commission in January of 2022. So if the public would like to draw their own maps or provide comments to our redistricting consultants, they should do so before January. However, any of our neighbors can still submit their own maps for the City Commission's consideration before May 5th, or actually really late April to be on that agenda item. Okay, our clerk has let me know that we have no raised hands, and I don't think we have any callers either. So that concludes our redistricting presentation. I want to thank everyone who presented tonight and also who participated by viewing the meeting. And again, this is recorded. Marie, if you would mind sharing the next screen that has the email address for folks to submit maps. So you can submit maps to comments@cityofgainesville.org, or you can visit our redistricting webpage on the City of Gainesville website, which is www.cityofgainesville.org/citycommission/community interest/redistricting. Thank you so much. Have a great evening, everyone.